Swaminathan says, loving like a glass of wine, some candlelight at dusk, and a big old plate of infrastructure. I say that jokingly, but it's important because we are going to talk infrastructure with a member of the House of Representatives from Massachusetts. We invite into the stream Representative Ayanna Presley, along with our education reporter, Arthi Swaminathan, because we also want to talk about what's going on with student debt payments and moratoriums. We're going to get to all of that. But Representative, thank you for joining us in the stream. And have to ask you, this $1.2 trillion infrastructure deal now in the House, there are Democrats who are saying not so fast. Is this thing going to pass?
I think what's important and what progressives and certainly Democratic leadership and even President Biden have been holding the line on, and I expect us to stay the course, is that if we're going to pass, that these bills must be passed in tandem. A more narrow bipartisan infrastructure bill and then a broader reconciliation bill that meets the moment and then makes those investments in human infrastructure. Infrastructure is more than capital. It's more than highways, roads, and bridges. Climate justice is infrastructure. Housing is infrastructure. The care economy is infrastructure. Childcare is infrastructure. And so we need to pass a broad reconciliation bill, and those bills should be moved in tandem. And I think it's very important in order for us to restore and or to maintain the trust of the American people that we keep our word on that and that we pass bold investments that meet the moment and most importantly, meet the needs of the people. The greatest tool of persuasion is impact. And so we have to keep our word and we have to deliver for the American people.
Representative, if they are passed in tandem, if we do see the $1.2 trillion infrastructure package and this $3.5 trillion budget framework that we got passed this morning in the Senate, does it go far enough in your view?
You know, there's nothing in front of me as of right now. And so I'm just a firm believer in that, you know, I continue to push for legislation and investments that will ensure that we have a just, equitable, and robust recovery, that we do not return to just a recovery to a pre-COVID status quo normal. We know that was already insufficient, but that we are charting a different path forward. Every inequity and disparity and racial injustice was laid bare during this pandemic and exacerbated. And so I just continue to organize and to advocate for those broad investments that are responsive to the needs of the people. Housing is infrastructure, care is infrastructure, and of course we have to make those formidable investments so far as our climate resiliency as well.
Representative Presley, I want to pivot to student loans because without paying all these student loans, people have been able to reallocate that money. But we got that news that the Education Department is finally extending that pause, but they're not extending it to when you wanted it to be extended to. March 2022 is when you said you would be a preferred date. What do you think about this final extension that they're doing? Does it go far enough, or do you think that we need to pair this with something else?
Yeah, I think it's both and. This is a nearly $2 trillion crisis. It is affecting people from every walk of life. I just came from visiting a senior community in my district of 100 elders. And this was one of the first issues that they asked me about. In fact, the fastest growing constituency of student borrowers are 50 plus. I have constituents in my district that are 76 years old, still paying on student loans. This is an economic justice issue. It is a racial justice issue. Another report came out saying that this has student debt disproportionately falls on the shoulders of Black and brown borrowers, and it has created the racial wealth gap. Higher education was supposed to close the racial wealth gap, but that's not true for Black Americans. 85% of Black students feel they have no choice but to borrow, and then they're 5 times more likely to default than their white counterparts. So this is a tool for our recovery. It's a way to jumpstart the economy. It is an economic justice issue. It is a racial justice issue. It is a nearly $2 trillion crisis. We organized and fought to extend the pause on student loan payments, myself, Senator Warren, and Leader Schumer. And now we have to go farther, and that is to cancel student debt up to $50,000 with the same authority that President Biden used to extend the pause on payments, to cancel student debt by executive action with the stroke of a pen and mitigate this hurt. People are paying student loan bills monthly that are the equivalent of mortgage payments.
Representative Presley, you mentioned something that I want to bring up again, that higher education was seen as a ladder up into more money, better situation for themselves. But again and again, we've seen so much research saying Black student borrowers are actually being weighed down. Wealth building is taking an impact. So how do you explain this to someone considering college for the very first time?
That's right. It is a racial justice issue, and because of draconian discriminatory policies like redlining, Black families did not have the same opportunity to build generational wealth, which is why this burden has fallen disproportionately on Black and Brown student borrowers. So again, it is a racial justice issue, and we can do something about it. It's a nearly $2 trillion crisis, and we need to alleviate this hardship for the American people and cancel student debt by executive action. The president does have the authority. Congress gave him that authority through the Higher Education Act. And so the same authority that was used to extend the pause on payments, that same authority can be used to cancel student debt at $50,000 by executive action, and we should do it. When it comes to student debt, it is not or, it is both and. We need to do whatever we can in the here and now and beyond to eliminate this hardship for the American people.
Representative, sometimes good intentions have unexpected consequences. The Washington Post this morning had an interesting article about the eviction moratorium and how it's impacting individual mom and pop landlords, actually, as they describe them, people of color, because then I'm not talking about the people who might be evicted, but the landlords who are unable now to collect rent. And I know that the Congress has allocated billions of dollars to help all of these people, the renters as well as the landlords, but it's not working just as it was intended. What can be done to make sure that these people on both sides are not impacted any further in a negative way?
Sure. Well, what I found is that there was a lot of misinformation about who could access RAFT. And again, we did appropriate those formidable investments. And we just need to get those funds out. And again, this is about alleviating the hardship. The pandemic may have disproportionately hit some communities harder than others, but everyone has felt the hurt of this public health crisis, this pandemic-induced recession, and we must leave no one behind. And so that includes renters and also small landlords. I serve in the Financial Services Committee, and I want to thank Chairwoman Waters for her leadership. I think it's really critical that we bring her bill to the floor to extend this eviction moratorium and to continue to address these issues writ large. But we need states and municipalities to get these funds out. And again, there's been a lot of misinformation about who can access these funds. The funds have been appropriated. They are there to both mitigate the hardship for renters as well as small landlords. So please do take advantage of those resources.
Representative Ayanna Presley, representing in Massachusetts, thank you so much for joining us. Arthi Swaminathan, as always, good to see you.